Okay. This has very quickly become my single biggest gripe with Mortal Kombat 11. It's not the bizarre story direction, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I'm not going to actually show any. I'm probably just going to show story footage that came from trailers, and that's it. It's not the Towers of Time feeling like, oh, there's no point in actually playing them unless I want to grab consumables, because really that's what they are. Because if I want to play Rapid Towers, oh cool, consumables, 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 consumables. Yay. Like I already didn't have enough of the fucking things. Why not give me something that I can actually use? Why not give me specific augments? Like, instead of it being random stuff and random augments, I would have loved it if it's like Terminator augment, charged outer lining or something. But then again, when you really think about it, what else could they do? They could do skins or augments. They could do augments for your characters and certain things, but at a certain point, you're going to unlock everything for every character. I mean, the gear augment thing, it truly can just become the augments at a certain point. So there really isn't much else to do, but conversely, that kind of hurts this game a little bit. But at the same time, I don't know how you fix that without doubling the amount of gear in the game. That's really the only way I could see them doing that, and making 60 pieces of gear, as I mentioned, could make things nasty. It would not have been possible with NetherRealm's development schedule, and that's probably the biggest thing, is that Warner Brothers' influence on this game is more apparent than ever, and people are coming around to realizing that a lot of the problems with this game are not problems that really NetherRealm imposed upon it. WB wants a NetherRealm game out every 2 years. They really, really do. But they want them to be bigger, more ambitious, and be the next biggest thing. And right now, it's working, sales-wise. Mortal Kombat 11 sold 1.8 million digital copies within its first month. That is an obscene amount of money. If we were to break that down, 1.8 million copies of a fighting game, which is a relatively obscure genre. And if every one of those 1.8 million people spent $60, they didn't. Some of them paid upwards of twice that amount. But just to lowball it and get an approximation, 1.8 million copies of a $60 game netted WB almost $115 million. That is huge. NetherRealm and WB made roughly $115 million in 1 month. Now, let's suppose that by September, where I finally got dethroned, let's say that number doubled. Let's say it's let's say it's about 3.5 million sales by the end of that. 150, now that's double that. That's $230 million in 6 months. That's crazy. Granted, this is not Call of Duty amounts of money. Call of Duty Black Ops 4 was labeled a disappointment by Activision because it made $50 million less than the last game in 3 days. Call of Duty Black Ops 4 still made $500 million in 3 days. That's mind-blowing. And remember, Mortal Kombat 11 made, if our math is correct, about half of that in 6 months. That might make Mortal Kombat 11 sound like a relative flop, but here's what you need to understand. Mortal Kombat is a fighting game. Fighting games are a pretty obtuse genre. Not obtuse, they're relatively obscure games. It's also trying to like trying to compete with these numbers trying to compete with Call of Duty is a little bit asinine. Trying to compare a fighting game to Call of Duty is like saying, oh, well, Shovel Knight, or like, oh, Shovel Knight's a flop. Look at Shovel Knight compared to, I don't know, Batman Arkham Knight. And even then, I'm willing to bet Shovel Knight sold more than Arkham Knight. But anyway, that point stands, right? Comparing an indie game to a AAA game, that comparison is not exactly that cut and dry, because this is a AAA fighting game in the most popular fighting game franchise of all time, period. It's still NetherRealm and WB competing with a franchise that makes $500 million a year in 3 days, or $500 million in 3 days, and is considered a disappointment. Don't ask me how that is a fucking disappointment, but it is. And of course, like I said, our numbers, $115 million in the first month and $230 million by the time it gets dethroned, is assuming everybody bought the $60 version. Remember, the premium version costs upwards of, if memory serves, $110. In fact, I'm going to very quickly double check that math, just so that, you know, I'm not accidentally talking out of my ass, you know what I mean? So, very quickly, I'm going to verify how much the Mortal Kombat 11 Premium Edition was at launch. Yeah, $120 through ebgames.ca. I know it's currently down in price because they're running some sort of really big sale where Mortal Kombat 11 is running at 40% off, which MKX did basically the same thing around this time. It's a holiday thing. Black Friday is relatively soon here, folks. So it kind of makes sense. But the base price right now for Mortal Kombat 11 Premium Edition on the PlayStation Store, once that page loads, is $90. It's actually $90. Whereas Mortal Kombat 11 itself is, I'm gonna say, is gonna be about $60 because I think it's gonna be displaying US prices. I got the Mortal Kombat Premium Edition at $130. Yeah, $60. So it's $90 for the Premium Edition, we'll say. The reason why it was $120 at EB Games is because Canada money sucks. But 90 USD, okay? That's a 50% increase in that. So that is $180 million, roughly. Approximately $180 million in a month. And then breaking $300 million in 6 months. That's a lot of money. There are movies that make less money than this. There are full-blown go-to-the-theater movies that make less money than this. And not small movies either. Obviously not like Avengers movies. Avengers movies make stupid amounts of money. Jurassic movies make stupid amounts of money. But just as an example of the kinds of money that this game makes, and I'm getting to this point, let's take a look at a recent action movie blockbuster, The Gemini Man, which just came out not too long ago. I would say Terminator Dark Fate, but if we want numbers on Terminator Dark Fate, I think we're going to have to wait until November 4th, the Monday, in order to get any decent amount of numbers. So, how much money did Gemini Man cost? Or how much money did it bring in? Its box office is, according to Box Office Mojo via IMDb, so take that for what you will, it made $149.3 million at the box office. So it broke even on its budget. It made a little bit of money. But I do mean a little bit of money, relatively speaking. Its budget was $138 million. Now, NetherRealm and WB have not, and probably will not, release the budget for Mortal Kombat 11. But it's safe to say that with game development costs, it probably wasn't cheap. I'm not going to assign any numbers to it, but it probably wasn't cheap to make. Could it have been 7 figures? Probably, but again, no figures. So, the fact that this game made almost the same amount of money that Gemini Man did, which was a relatively hyped up American action thriller because it had Will Smith, and Will Smith came out October 11th in the United States. So it had about the same amount of time. And Gemini Man, which is a Hollywood blockbuster type movie, made probably a similar amount of money in a month that Mortal Kombat 11 did. That's crazy to think about because usually nobody thinks of video games as these big, crazy businesses unless you're talking about like EA and Activision and Blizzard and all of these guys. But any AAA game is going to make bank, and Mortal Kombat is no exception. And WB knows that. But the thing is that the way that they make bank causes some serious problems, and we're finally bringing it all back around. WB, as a publisher, is pretty fucking scummy. Doing things like with Arkham Origins. We're not going to patch the game because we're too busy working on DLC. No, seriously. That is actually something that they said in the past. The Arkham Knights PC version. Oh my lord. I did not play that game on PC, but oh my lord. That looked horrendous. Why, too? Why was it so horrendous on PC? Because they outsourced it to a small development team of 12 people to port Batman Arkham Knight? Arkham Knight was going to make a fuckload of money, WB. You could have afforded that. But no, it's all about cutting costs where you can, and then carving content out of games in order to make money. Arkham Knight had a 6-month had a season pass that lasted 6 months. And what was in that? Story-based villain stuff. Story-based villain stuff. We had challenge maps and the Season of Infamy and, well, skins and things. Would have been nice to actually unlock these things, but I'm less of a stickler about that sort of thing than others are. But truly, imagine this, okay? With if we're going to compare it to Mortal Kombat 11, all right? Let's say Mortal Kombat 11 launches with a story mode, the launch Towers of Time, which they've added more towers in free updates, 3 of the 5 classic towers, and maybe the crypt doesn't even exist. Okay? That's what's happening in Conquer mode. Your online exists, tournament exists, local exists, and maybe AI battle doesn't exist either. We'll just say that. AI battle doesn't exist and crypt doesn't exist. Story mode exists. Towers of Time exists, but it's at its launch state with probably about half of the towers and half of the rewards that we've seen. Classic towers are missing a couple. Let's say Survivor and Endless are missing, and the crypt doesn't exist. Now imagine if before the game comes out, we'll call it the what am I going to call this one? I don't want to call it the Combat Pack because that's for DLC characters as such. But let's call it the Kamidogu Pack because the Kamidogu are for each of the realms and is a cute little lore thing. So, let's say every month represents a Kamidogu. Let's say Earthrealm. The Earthrealm Kamidogu is up first. And that gives us, we'll say that gives us Nightwolf as a character. But it also gives us towers to play through, and maybe gives us the other 2 classic towers. But you've got to pay for those. Because if you don't pay, you don't get that. Remarkably, NetherRealm has managed to avoid much of WB's more scummy ways. Not to say that some of those scummy ways got in there. Looking at you, Microtransactions. But somehow or another, Mortal Kombat 11 came out pretty feature complete for a WB game. How it managed that, how the guys at NetherRealm managed to be like, here is how we're going to release our game and do that, and the most amount of content that's going to be carved out is going to be characters. How they managed that and didn't end up being to the point where whole modes and pieces of modes didn't get chopped out like Arkham Knight? I'll never know. That must be some sort of agreement that they have going on over there. But now we can talk about this, because this may be how they got away with it. Microtransactions are in Mortal Kombat, and it's fucking bullshit. I used to defend microtransactions, believe it or not, but now I don't. Now I really, really, really don't. The only nice thing is that it says purchased, but that's a bit of a misnomer. I unlocked all of these intros. I unlocked both of these things. I unlocked Hunted Soul, I unlocked Mega Dune, I unlocked every single one of these things in both of these bundles. The only reason why I don't have 5,000 time crystals and why I've spent them to begin with is because sometimes there are items that show up in these bundles that I've not had, and like, I don't know when I'm going to get them, so I may as well. Now, the logical conclusion to that is that, did you actually spend money on microtransactions and say you hated them? Actually, I didn't. And this is the only reason why I am not absolutely livid, just mostly livid, that this exists. That I could go in here and spend $53.49 Canadian, that's $49.99 American for you guys in the United States, to get 5,600 time crystals. Yeah. Oh, then you might be wondering, then for those of you who are watching from the outside and don't understand, well, wait a minute, how do you have approximately, how did you say you had almost 4,000 source crystals, which would have been probably about, according to this game's logic, this would probably be pretty good. Then how did you have about $50 worth of time crystals without spending any money on this game? Did they come as a pre-order bonus or what? No time crystals in the pre-order bonus. Sometimes time crystals, you get a relative pittance of 10 time crystals every time you level up. So I've gotten 800. What is my rank? 80, yeah, so I got about 800 time crystals that way. But that's a pittance. The gauntlet, I think is about every 10 stages, gives you 200 time crystals. Trying to remember if any of the other towers do. I don't think so. I don't think they give you time crystals, but the main way I've gotten most of my time crystals is, if memory serves, I think you get some of them in the story mode too, but I honestly don't remember a damn thing about story mode as far as unlocks go outside of gear. But here's where else I got a large portion of my time crystals. Online play. Specifically in the Seasons of Time. In the Combat League. Now, I'm not too sure, but I think you can, I'm not too sure, so don't quote me on this, but it might be possible to get time crystals if you play enough ranked sets to kind of get a streak going, and then, like, online play rewards, because I've gotten coins, I've gotten souls, I have gotten time crystals, and easy fatality tokens through this method. A lot of easy fatality tokens. Over 1,000 of them. And these easy fatality tokens used to only be purchasable through direct money. In Mortal Kombat X, you could only buy 30, or a pack of 5 or a pack of 30 for $5 or $15 for easy fatality tokens, and that was it. But now you can actually unlock them in game, same with skip fights and gear level up tokens. No need for that. I'll be right back to buy them, and I'll be right back. But if you're feeling particularly impatient, you can buy them too. The fact that this isn't even an option is ridiculous. Oh, and the original premium shop was garbage. Half of these options were gone. You could buy one intro, one gear, one skin, maybe one brutality, and here are 3 different versions of easy fatality tokens, which initially took up their own slots. But at the very least, you could also unlock them through gameplay. However, the fact that it's even an option to be able to spend real money in a $60 to $90 game in order to skip the grind is fucking stupid. And I hate that this is actually a thing. And I hate that I used to defend this fucking shit back when it was even worse in Injustice 2. I just mad at myself for that. But that's in the past and people can change, so that's a good thing that I've learned that at least. Now we can actually talk about story. Overall, the story, me and my buddy are not at all pro players. Not at all. Hardly are we pros, but we can play pretty competently. And what do you know? We beat the story mode in 3 hours. 3 hours! It would take me 8 hours to beat the story mode of Mortal Kombat 9. It had 16 chapters. Alright? And particularly difficult fights at the end with Shao Kahn, but that's besides the point. Mortal Kombat X was about 4 or 5 hours, depending on how things went. Injustice 1 was about 6 hours. And Mortal Kombat and Injustice 2 was about the same length as MKX. 4 or 5 hours. But I'm not sure if you noticed, but while there are 12 chapters and different splits of fights and technically 3 endings, as I said, 3 hours. The cutscenes were shorter than all of the others, and me and my friend blasted through this shit. And we've died a couple of times. And we've died several times throughout the story, and it took us 3 hours. And when I look back on it, it feels like, to me anyway, that the story for Mortal Kombat 11 got cut in half. There was this whole setup with Shinnok and everything that never panned through. We had weird detours and odd things to try and mash everything together. It just didn't sit right. Something went wrong. And whatever went wrong, to cut the story short, it felt really brief. And it felt like we were missing some stuff in the story. And this leads me to wonder if it's true that the story was cut in half to save time. Because there's rumors that that's a thing. I use the term rumors loosely. Not because it's unbelievable, but because, well, I have my reasons. However, there's another thing that I feel like this story didn't do right. Unlike every other story mode to date, there isn't an end game unlock. You don't even have to play a third of the story to get the story mode unlock. That story mode unlock, who is also purchasable if you want to skip the grind, is Frost. By completing Chapter 4, you unlock Frost. She's the earliest unlock in the entirety of the NetherRealm story. Brainiac was at the end of Injustice 2. Nobody was unlockable in Injustice 1. Mortal Kombat X would let you unlock Shinnok in the story mode, unless through a glitch you redeemed your Samurai Skin Pack and basically unlocked Shinnok without playing the game. But that was a glitch more than anything. And I know that's a glitch because I actually did that. But Mortal Kombat 9 not only had a character unlock relatively late in the story, but not at the end, in Cyber Sub-Zero. Quan Chi was unlocked by beating the story mode in its entirety. That was 2 characters you had to unlock. And now imagine, if you will, Shinnok and Mileena were supposed to be playable characters. And one of the rumors was that Shinnok was supposed to be unlockable. Imagine this, if you will. Frost is unlockable at Chapter 4. Mileena unlocks at Chapter 7. Shinnok unlocks in Chapter 11. And maybe in Chapter 12, you unlock the ability to play as Fire God Liu Kang in single fights and towers only. Fire God Liu Kang would not be playable online or in multiplayer elements, but he would be playable in all of the other elements should you choose to play as Fire God Liu Kang. Maybe this was their plan. Maybe every 3 or 4 chapters you were supposed to unlock a character, with maybe Fire God Liu Kang being unlockable. I can't say for sure. But it's interesting to know that technically Fire God Liu Kang is a different character, with different moves, that is not playable outside of Chapter 12, End of an Era. You can fight him, however, in the DLC character-specific towers, in a DLC character-specific tower. I don't have any footage of it, but essentially if you go to the Towers of Time and go to the Premier Towers and go and play through the character when they come out, there's a tower where you have to beat a character who has a buff, to take their buff and keep climbing until you got to Fire God Liu Kang, and using all of your buffs, beat Fire God Liu Kang with your buffs. So why didn't they make him unlockable? I don't know. Maybe they never intended on him being unlockable. I can't say for sure. But the fact that the only unlockable we got was in Chapter 4, when every other one had some sort of reward for beating the actual story mode, is just one of the many disappointments that I and many others have with the story mode. But I feel like the story mode has had its moments that don't make it complete trash and make it at least passable, but its problems have had come to light before. I'm talking about specific moments here. Chapter 1 as a whole was probably its best chapter. Both Nate and I were gobsmacked when Sonya died. We didn't see it coming. The Timequake sequence was pretty neat. Shaolin Monks was cute. Basically, the first 4 chapters worked out okay, for the most part. But it starts to fall apart fast, and really, the only really good part after the Fire and Ice segments was a certain point in Chapter 11, cutting the strings, which involves Liu Kang and Raiden. That's really it. Everything else was ranged from alright to really? for various whatever reasons. And some people will like some of these sequences more than others, but truly, the story mode rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And probably my final major gripe with Mortal Kombat 11 already got its own segment. That's really, the Towers of Time don't feel replayable.
It might just be because I've unlocked most of the things, but honestly, I don't feel the pull to play more of the Towers of Time other than to just grab some gear level up tokens or try my luck for augments and keeping up with the race against time. And really, just to get to the 10th percentile, I've completed 6 towers, and it's been over a day and a half since it started. I'm already in the top 26%, and I can hold that spot for the next 4 days and be fine. Oh, I remember what my final gripe was. The fighting itself is this is my smallest gripe with this game, because the fighting overall is really solid and every character feels at least a little bit viable in some way, shape, or form, and it's quite nice to be able to pick and choose from multiple different characters. But I think one of the biggest issues with Mortal Kombat 11 is how they decide to implement the tournament variation. I think one of my biggest gripes with the fighting is that overall it's fun and it has its moments, but again, it feels a little bit flat. And some people would say, well, Mortal Kombat X was broke. But it was fun. I mean, I could lab all day and have at least some level of fun with some of these characters, with the characters in Mortal Kombat X. And while I always have a blast playing as Kotal Khan and just smashing people with my big freaking sword and going in with Nightwolf, ordinarily, I would have bounced around the cast a hell of a lot more. It took me almost a month to gravitate towards Kotal Khan. And once I gravitated towards Kotal Khan, he was my main until Nightwolf dropped. I've never had a steady, singular main for that long. Granted, of course, I also played Scorpion and Sub-Zero very early on, but I don't know. They were around for a little bit, yes, but it's really Kotal Khan that I then stuck with. Which was weird, because usually I'm like, oh, I feel like I want to play Raiden. No, wait, I want to try Baraka. Nice. Let's see what Geras can do. But I never had the pull to play with a lot of these characters, especially characters I liked. I like Kitana, Eric Black. Where did he go? I lost my luster for Sub-Zero, for fuck's sakes. Only recently I've gotten an interest in Raiden. That's just because I found the fun stuff I could do with a particular move called Storm Cell, which is a combo extender. And for me, combos don't necessarily make a game, but combo artistry is really, really fun. It's nice to see how people optimize and break down and go for swaggy shit or whatever. But Mortal Kombat 11 doesn't allow for a lot of swag. It's a very to the point, honed in game. And some people are not too big on that. Me personally, because this is my thoughts, I kind of think that, but not to the same degree. Scarlet and Baraka for when he was around, and Raiden, and even a little bit of Cetrion. But I had more fun with Injustice 2, playing as Black Canary, Green Arrow, Green Lantern, Blue Beetle, Batman, Superman, let's see, Raiden, Sub-Zero, messing around with Donatello, and a large portion of the cast I had a lot of fun with. Mortal Kombat X, the last Mortal Kombat game before this one, I probably played every single character at least 100 times. I could check the records to be sure, too. But let me just list off all of the characters that I actually had a shitload of fun playing in Mortal Kombat X. Predator, Alien, Leatherface. We haven't even gotten to Mortal Kombat characters yet. Jason for a little while. Sub-Zero, Raiden, Kotal Khan, Ferritor, Kitana, Scorpion, Kunjin, Tremor, Triborg, Boraicho. I had a lot of fun with a lot of these characters. Here, there's about half a dozen characters that I actually enjoy playing, and that just feels sad. But now it's time for the fun parts. Time for the positivity. And quite frankly, this game has its positive moments. And where do we get our positive moments from? Let's start with the tutorial. If you want to really learn how to play Mortal Kombat, this is the way to do it. This is probably the best tutorial that they've had, and it's the most informative. You play through this, you get the feeling for it, and it is very informative. Oh yeah, and I forgot, you can also get time crystals through the tutorial, so there's a reward path for you right there. Fatality trading! You just want to watch fatalities? Are you a sick fuck who wants to watch somebody get their heart torn out? This is where you go. And you can unlock fatalities by doing their inputs if you happen to have a good enough internet connection. You don't have to unlock them. Wait, anyway. Practice is actually quite fun. This is a very detailed practice mode with frame data and situational setups. It's the most detailed practice mode to date, which allows you to really hone in if you really want to get good. But what if you don't want to get good? What if you don't want to be tournament level? What if you're not a big fan of playing online? What if you want this to be a party game? What if you want this to be a game where you and your buddies come out and play? Local, you go to local, you set up your characters, you're good to go. The fighting feels great in this game. And that's kind of important that they nailed the fighting, and they, quite frankly, did. Is the style the best way to go about it? Maybe not, but it's definitely fun to play, at least for me. And despite my gripes, the towers can be replayable. You can actually go into the towers and replay them. The rewards kind of stink once you get to my point, but if you don't play as often as I do, well, shit, you got stuff to unlock on a regular basis. Excuse me. I would have wished that the Holiday Towers got their own slot, though. And let's not forget. Let us not forget, of course, character customization. Character customization is one of the best things in fighting games. And allowing yourself to build your perfect Noob Saibot, or Scarlet, or Cabal, or Shao Kahn is just a blast. I mean, look, let's take a look at Shao Kahn as an example. Here are the different versions of Shao Kahn I got going here. We got basically MK11 Shao Kahn with a nicer lance. We got big purple Shao Kahn with a gem hammer. Big spooky monster Shao Kahn with jaw hammers. A rock hammer, and a big scary thing with horns, and that's just what I have. You have other hammers, like this fucking thing. Or if you like the oncoming storm style with ribs attached, or if you're a big fan of goofs, there's a kind of a funny one here too. It's not as wide as Injustice, but there's still a lot that you can customize. And that is not a bad thing at all. But I think one of the big things that Mortal Kombat 11 does wrong is something I need to talk about in my final thoughts.